Your baby is communicating with you right now, not in words, not in anything you were taught to recognize, but in the only language they have. Every cry, every reach, every time they lock eyes with you from across the room, and then look away and look back again, every single one of those moments is a sentence. And most parents, through absolutely no fault of their own, are missing most of them. Not because they're not paying attention, because nobody ever told them what to listen for. Developmental neuroscience has spent the last 50 years decoding that language. And what researchers have found is not what most parenting books prepare you for. A baby cannot tell you what they need. They cannot tell you when something is wrong, when they are overwhelmed, when they are scared, or when the thing you just did made them feel completely safe for the first time all day. They don't have the words. They barely have the concepts. What they have is a body that broadcasts everything, constantly, to anyone paying close enough attention to read it. The problem is that nobody teaches parents how to read it. What follows are 6 things the science says your baby is genuinely trying to communicate, 6 things that shape the architecture of their developing brain, 6 things that will matter far longer than most parents realize. Some of them will surprise you. One of them might stop you completely. All of them are backed by decades of peer-reviewed developmental research, and every single one of them is something you can act on today. Number 1, crying is not manipulation. It is the only emergency signal I have. Here is the belief that causes more harm in early parenting than almost any other. The idea that responding too quickly to a crying baby will spoil them. That letting them cry it out teaches independence. That a baby who gets picked up every time they cry will learn to use crying to control you. Developmental psychologist Mary Ainsworth spent decades studying exactly this question. And what she found was the precise opposite of what folk wisdom had long assumed. In her landmark Baltimore longitudinal study, published in 1978, she tracked how quickly and consistently mothers responded to their infants' cries across the first year of life. And then she watched what happened. The babies whose cries were answered most promptly and consistently did not become more demanding. They became less. By the end of the first year, they cried significantly less than babies whose signals were routinely ignored or delayed. Because what a baby learns when you come is not crying works. What they learn is, the world is safe, and I don't need to scream to survive in it. A baby cannot self-soothe. Not in the way that word implies. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for regulating emotion and calming distress, is not functionally online at birth. It will not reach anything close to maturity for over 2 decades. When a baby cries, and no one comes, the stress hormone cortisol floods their system. And in the early months, they have no neurological mechanism to bring it back down on their own. They need a nervous system that is already regulated, yours, to regulate theirs. That process is called co-regulation. And it is not optional. It is how the brain learns to manage itself. When you pick up your baby, you are not teaching them dependency. You are literally building their capacity for independence, one calmed nervous system at a time. Number 2, when you look at me and respond to me, you are building my brain. In the 1980s, researchers at Harvard University began studying what they called serve and return interaction. The name comes from tennis. The baby reaches toward something, babbles, makes a face. That is the serve. The caregiver notices, responds, mirrors, engages. That is the return. And then the baby serves again. What the researchers discovered was that this back-and-forth exchange, this seemingly ordinary conversational ping-pong between a parent and a pre-verbal infant, is one of the primary mechanisms by which the brain builds neural connections in the first years of life. The Center on the Developing Child at Harvard has since described it as one of the most important experiences in early human development. Not educational toys, not any program or product. The simple, repeated, responsive exchange between a baby and a person who is paying attention. What disrupts it matters just as much as what enables it. In 1975, developmental psychologist Edward Tronick at the University of Massachusetts ran the still face experiment. A mother interacts warmly with her infant, and then, on instruction, goes completely expressionless. No response, no movement, just a blank face. Within seconds, the baby notices. They try harder, smile more brightly, point more urgently, do everything they know how to do to re-engage the person in front of them. And when nothing comes back, they collapse. They turn away. Their whole body language shifts toward withdrawal. The experiment lasts about 2 minutes. The reunion that follows, when the mother re-engages, restores the baby almost immediately. But the research question Tronick was really asking was about what happens when that blank face is not an experiment, when it is a pattern, when a parent is chronically distracted, overwhelmed, or depressed. What does that chronic unavailability teach a baby about whether the world responds to them? The answer, according to 30 years of follow-up research, is that it teaches them it doesn't. And that belief becomes a template. Number 3, I need you to be predictable more than I need you to be perfect. Parents spend enormous energy trying to do everything right. The right sleep schedule, the right feeding approach, the right developmental activity for the right age. And underneath all of that effort is usually a version of the same fear. What if I get it wrong and it permanently damages them? Here is what the research actually says. Perfection is not the variable. Predictability is. Developmental psychologist Ed Tronick, in a 1989 paper that has since become foundational to the field, introduced the concept of interactive repair. He found that even in the best parent-infant relationships, interactions are misattuned, meaning the parent misreads the signal, responds wrongly, or simply misses it altogether. Roughly 70% of the time. 70%. The other 30% is what most parents are desperately trying to achieve all of the time. But what Tronick also found was that the repair, the moment when the parent notices the mismatch and corrects it, is not just acceptable, it may be the most valuable part of the interaction. Because what the baby is learning through rupture and repair is not that the world is perfect. They are learning that when connection breaks, it can be restored. That is the belief that underlies emotional resilience for the rest of their life. You do not need to be a perfect parent. You need to be a parent who comes back. Number 4, your stress is not invisible to me. I am already carrying some of it. In 2012, researchers at the University of California, San Francisco, published a study measuring cortisol levels in 69 mother-infant pairs during a stressful social interaction. They found that cortisol synchrony, meaning the mother's stress hormone levels and the infant's stress hormone levels rising and falling together, was present in babies as young as 3 months old. And, in a finding that received far less attention than it deserved, the synchrony was stronger in the direction of transmission from mother to infant, not the reverse. What this means in practical terms is that your baby is not just sensing your mood in a vague, impressionistic way. Their body is chemically tracking your physiological state and mirroring it. A parent who is chronically stressed is not simply tired or less present. They are, without knowing it or meaning it, transmitting a stress signal into the developing nervous system of their infant. Repeatedly, over months. This is not an argument for guilt. Chronic parental stress is almost always the product of circumstances, not choices. What it is an argument for is this: that supporting a parent's mental and physical health is not separate from supporting infant brain development. It is the same intervention. You cannot pour from a nervous system that is already dysregulated. Taking care of yourself is, neuroscientifically speaking, taking care of your baby. Number 5. The boring moments are the ones I will build my whole self from. There is a strange tension at the center of modern parenting. Parents have access to more information, more tools, more expert advice than any previous generation. And anxiety about parenting has never been higher. One reason for that anxiety is the belief that development happens in specific, intentional moments. The structured play session, the language-building activity, the carefully chosen toy, and those things matter. But the research suggests they matter far less than the thing that surrounds all of them. Developmental psychologist Jean-Pierre Lacanouette at the University of Toulouse spent years studying prenatal and early postnatal experience, specifically the sheer volume of ordinary, unremarkable interaction that constitutes most of a baby's day. The feeding that happens while you are half asleep, the nappy change where you make a face and they make a face back, the walk where you narrate what you are seeing even though they cannot understand a word. All of it is data. All of it is input. All of it is the raw material from which a brain assembles its model of what people are like, what communication is for, and whether the world is somewhere safe to grow. Neuroscientist Patricia Kuhl at the University of Washington showed in a landmark 2003 study that babies learn the phonetic sounds of their native language not from audio recordings, not from television, but exclusively from live human interaction. A real face, a real voice, a person who is physically present and responding. The learning simply does not happen the other way. Your ordinary presence is not a consolation prize for not doing something more structured. It is, the science says, exactly the point. Number 6. What I learn about love in this room, I will take everywhere. The Minnesota Longitudinal Study of Risk and Adaptation began in 1975. Researchers at the University of Minnesota enrolled 267 mothers and their newborns from families dealing with poverty, stress, and adversity, and followed them across 4 decades of life. They measured attachment security at 12 and 18 months, and then they watched what happened. What they found was extraordinary in its reach. Attachment security in infancy predicted social competence at age 10. It predicted quality of friendships at age 16. It predicted relationship patterns in early adulthood. It predicted mental health outcomes at age 30. Not perfectly, because nothing in human development is perfectly determined. But the statistical relationship was consistent across every decade of the study. The internal model a baby builds of relationships, built from those thousands of ordinary interactions in the first 2 years of life, is not just a phase. It is a template. A set of predictions the brain carries into every relationship it ever forms, whether people can be trusted, whether connection is safe, whether reaching towards someone is likely to result in care or in nothing. That template is not fixed. It can be revised. Research on what attachment theorists call earned security shows clearly that adults who received responsive care later in life, or who came to a coherent understanding of their own early experiences, can develop an internal working model that functions exactly like secure attachment built in infancy. The window does not close, but the window is open right now. And every ordinary, repeated, responsive moment you have with your baby is a sentence in a story they are telling themselves about what the world is like. None of this requires perfection. None of it requires a program, a schedule, or a significant amount of money. What it requires is the one thing that was always at the center of this: attention. The kind that notices when something shifts. The kind that comes back after it gets it wrong. The kind that understands that the cry is a sentence, the gaze is a question, and the ordinary afternoon in a room together is quietly building the architecture of a whole person. Your baby is not asking for the perfect parent. They are asking for a parent who keeps showing up, who responds often enough, who repairs when it breaks, who is present in the boring moments with enough regularity that a small brain can build a prediction. Someone is here, and they are paying attention, and I am safe. That prediction is the foundation of everything. If this changed how you hear your baby today, subscribe to this channel and leave a comment. I want to know which of these 6 landed hardest for you.